Returning now to news at home, more now from Stephen Poloz, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, talking about the interest rate hike this morning. Let's hear now.
Monetary policy report. Before taking your questions, I want to give you some insight into Governing Council's deliberations. Our discussion began with the big picture. Inflation is on target. The economy is operating close to capacity. Our outlook published today is that this situation will continue. Governing Council believes that higher interest rates will be needed to keep inflation on target, and that's consistent with our actions today. Évidemment, la politique monétaire dépend toujours des nouvelles données, surtout quand celles-ci ne cadrent pas avec les projections de la banque. Ces dernières semaines, certaines données ne semblaient pas en accord avec ces projections. Mais quand on considère l'ensemble des données, l'économie semble en bonne voie. Given the various uncertainties that we face, the bank is particularly data dependent at this time. However, that doesn't mean that monetary policy will react to every data fluctuation. A better way to think of this is that it takes hundreds of data points to make a complete picture, and each new one helps the picture come into sharper focus. So when a data point comes in differently than what the bank or other forecasters expect, it matters to the big picture, but it's almost never decisive on its own. Now, as we've previously discussed, an important issue we face is to understand how the economy reacts to higher interest rates, given the high debt loads being carried by Canadian households. We're monitoring this situation very closely. We've seen a moderation in credit growth, and the debt-to-income ratio has begun to edge lower. At the same time, the housing market is also dealing with the revised B20 lending guideline. And the data don't yet permit a sharp distinction between the impact of the guideline and the effects of higher interest rates. Governing Council did take some comfort from an analysis of the renewal process for 5-year mortgages taken out in 2014 and 2015. Which are up for renewal in 2019 and 2020. Now, this analysis shows a very modest increase in debt service ratios compared with the date of origination. N'oublions pas que beaucoup de ménages ont vu leurs revenus augmenter ces 5 dernières années, et ils ont pu s'habituer à des revenus plus élevés. Ils pourraient devoir s'ajuster quand le ratio du service de la dette va remonter. Cela aurait un effet sur les dépenses de consommation. Of course, this issue is most important for highly indebted households. We also know that the jump in payments will be greatest for those who took out mortgages when interest rates were at their lowest levels. That's in 2015 and 2016. So the mortgage renewal process is likely to weigh on the economy more in 2020 and 2021. All that said, Governing Council concluded that the economy should be resilient to higher interest rates, provided that labor income continues to grow. In our discussions, the biggest issue on the table was trade tensions. Comme nous l'avons déjà indiqué, l'incertitude entourant l'avenir de l'alignat a amené certaines entreprises à retarder leurs dépenses d'investissement ou à déplacer leurs investissements vers les États-Unis. Nous avions entrevu cette possibilité.
We have seen this possibility, and we integrated it into our projections a while ago.
The recent imposition by the U.S. government of actual tariffs on Canadian exports has made the situation more concrete. In the projections we're presenting today, we've added more negative judgment to our business investment forecast in recognition of this. We've also incorporated the effects of the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum and the various countermeasures implemented around the world. Box 2 in the NPR gives a flavor of the complex effects such actions will have. So let me summarize briefly. A U.S. company importing Canadian steel must now pay a 25% tariff. They may instead buy steel made in the U.S. or in some other country. Or, if no obvious substitutes are available, they may just pay the higher price. Or, The Canadian company may offer to reduce its price in order to absorb some of the tariff's impact. Or it may look to other markets to sell its products.
Business reaction will depend on the period that they believe that these tariffs will stay in place. For example, if we can renegotiate NAFTA, these tariffs will disappear. What we have to remember is that the result depends on the reaction of everyone, and this reaction depends on circumstance.
And then there are the countermeasures. Canada has imposed a 25% tariff on steel imported from the U.S. Now, this would seem to level the playing field, but many of the same complexities enter the analysis. All things considered, our analysis suggests that Canadian exports would fall, as would Canadian imports. Prices would rise at a time when the economy is already operating at capacity. So inflation would rise at least temporarily, but the effect could persist. Consumers would have less purchasing power, so demand would slow. Meanwhile, the potential of the economy would be eroded as companies invest less and become less competitive. So the economy would see shocks to both demand and to supply, resulting in two-sided risks to the future of inflation. Furthermore, the net effect on the economy might be buffered by any fiscal actions that governments might take. Now, as we said in the NPR, these various effects are likely to be small for the measures that have already been taken. In contrast, a large tariff on Canadian-made automobiles and parts would have a much greater effect on trade and the economy through these same channels. People are understandably concerned about this sort of escalation and want to know how monetary policy might react to it. Indeed, there was speculation that the bank wouldn't move interest rates today because of the possibility of further trade measures. But the bank cannot make policy on the basis of hypothetical scenarios. We felt it appropriate to set aside this risk and make policy on the basis of what has been announced. Given the multiple channels through which protectionist measures affect economies, it should be clear that monetary policy is ill-suited to counteract all of their effects. It may, of course, play a supporting role in conjunction with other policies. But to put it bluntly, the economy would slow, inflation would rise, and the exchange rate would depreciate, adding further to near-term price pressures in the Canadian economy. Therefore, the implications for interest rates of an escalation in trade actions would depend on the circumstances. Je tiens à le souligner.
I wish to underline that monetary policy cannot alone repair damage on the long term that protectionism might cause to employment. Having said this, we can't forget that our economy is in good health. It's turning almost at full capacity. Businesses are investing, even if some of them. The job market is vigorous, and everything's on target.
Remember that our economy is in a good place. We're operating near capacity. Companies are investing, even if some are hesitating. The labor market has been strong, and most importantly, inflation is on target. In this context, higher interest rates will be warranted to keep inflation near target. Governing Council will continue to take a gradual approach to adjusting rates guided by incoming data. On a more personal note, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Deputy Governor Stephen Poloz for his service to Canada. Stephen is headed back to San Francisco, and this is his last week at the bank. He was a great member of our team, and we wish him and his family well. The process of choosing a new Deputy Governor will be launched this week, led by our Board of Directors. With that, Senior Deputy Governor Wilkins and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you, Governor. So we'll get started on the questions. We'll have one and a quick follow-up so we can get around everyone in the first round. Again, just remind you, please push the microphone until the light turns green. First up I have on my list is Andrea Hopkins from Thomson Reuters.
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering your comment about, or the the statements about housing in both the NPR and in your statement, is it a good thing that housing appears to be stabilizing, in your view? And resales possibly recovering?
Well, we consider it, yes, it's a positive thing. I mean, we, as we've said multiple times in the past, one of the things that we'll be careful of is to mindful of those vulnerabilities so that a monetary policy doesn't inadvertently prompt the very risks that we've been monitoring. So watching the housing market adjust to both higher interest rates and to the new B20 guidelines is an important preoccupation for us. So we understand how it is evolving, and the fact that it's stabilizing suggests that we had a reasonable understanding from the beginning about how much the effects would be. But of course, it was a bit of an unknown for us because it was new territory, and in particular, the B20 guidelines. You know, that's we analyzed it a lot at the micro level to understand how it would affect things.
Okay, we are listening to Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz explain the Bank of Canada's decision today to raise the key interest rate in this country to 1.5%. He said that all the data points to a strong economy, and he says that our economy can maintain this, is providing the right environment for this interest rate hike.